In the middle of a Beatles concert, something unprecedented happened when a mysterious man in a suit walked onto the stage and approached the band directly, causing them to stop performing entirely. While 25,000 fans watched in stunned silence, this wasn't security, this wasn't planned, and this definitely wasn't part of the show. But who was this man? And what news was so urgent that it couldn't wait until after the concert? The roar hits you like a physical force the moment the arena doors swing open. The massive crowd's voices blend into something primal, something beyond music or celebration. Pure electrical energy crackling through the humid August air of Candlestick Park. The stage lights cut through cigarette smoke and camera flashes, illuminating four silhouettes that have become the most recognizable shapes on Earth in this summer of 1966. Tonight feels different, heavier somehow, as if the very air is charged with anticipation for something nobody can yet name. John adjusts his Rickenbacker, the familiar weight feeling heavier tonight than it has in months of endless touring. His fingers find the opening chord of rock and roll music, but the sound disappears instantly into the sonic hurricane that rises like a tsunami from the crowd. He glances sideways at Paul, who's already locked into that practiced smile, the one that says everything's perfect when nothing feels right anymore. The smile that's become as much a part of their uniform as the matching suits and polished boots. George's guitar joins in, methodical and precise, each note executed with the mechanical perfection that comes from playing the same songs night after night in venues where nobody can actually hear the music. His face shows the concentration of someone trying to find meaning in repetition, searching for something real in the midst of manufactured hysteria. Ringo's drums provide the only rhythm anyone can actually hear over the chaos, the steady heartbeat that keeps them anchored when everything else threatens to spin out of control. But tonight carries an unusual weight, something that makes the hair on the back of Paul's neck stand up despite the sweltering heat. There's an edge to the hysteria, a desperation that makes the security guards shift nervously along the barricades, their eyes scanning the crowd with more intensity than usual. The fans aren't just screaming, they're clawing, reaching, pressing forward with an intensity that bends the metal barriers and makes the concrete foundations groan under the pressure of countless bodies surging as one. Camera flashes strobe relentlessly throughout the arena, each burst revealing faces twisted with an almost religious fervour. Teenage girls with mascara streaming down their cheeks, boys shouting lyrics they can't possibly hear, adults caught up in something they don't quite understand but can't resist. The collective energy is intoxicating and terrifying at once, a reminder of just how thin the line is between worship and madness. Paul steps closer to his microphone, knowing the complete futility of the gesture. His voice will be lost before it leaves his lips, swallowed by the sonic storm that has become their constant companion. But he sings anyway, muscle memory carrying him through words that have lost all meaning in this environment, where communication has been reduced to pure spectacle. The setlist feels like a prison sentence tonight, 11 songs that might as well be noise, performed for people who can't hear a single note, but consume every moment with desperate hunger. A security guard near the stage catches John's attention, his face tense with concern as he speaks rapidly into his radio, gesturing toward a section of crowd that seems more agitated than the rest. What the guard sees, and what's making him so nervous, is about to change everything. The weight of fame sits differently on each of them tonight, like an ill-fitting costume they can no longer take off. For Paul, it's the constant performance, the need to be on every second they're in public, the exhaustion of being everyone's favourite Beatle. His throat is already raw from trying to sing over the screaming, and they're only 2 songs in. The microphone feels useless in his hands, a prop in a play where no one can hear the dialogue. John's frustration runs deeper, more bitter. The bigger-than-Jesus comment still echoes in death threats that arrive daily, in radio stations burning their records, in the very real fear that someone in this crowd might have come here for reasons other than music. He scans faces in the front rows, looking for anything that doesn't belong, any sign of danger. The screaming fans have become a sea of potential threats, and every flash of light could be hiding something sinister. The music itself has become secondary, maybe even irrelevant. They haven't heard themselves play properly in months. The monitoring systems can't compete with the volume of human voices, and their instruments might as well be props. George's intricate guitar work, The subtle harmonies they've perfected in the studio, none of it matters here. They're performing shadow theatre, going through motions while the real show happens in the audience. But there's something else tonight, something that makes Paul's chest tight with anticipation he can't name. The official messenger isn't behaving like security, isn't moving like press or management. He's walking with purpose through areas where fans are supposed to be contained, and somehow every guard he approaches steps aside without question. There's an authority to his movement that suggests official business, the kind that doesn't wait for convenient moments, and it's heading straight for the stage. The Beatles have learned to read crowds like weather patterns. They can sense when the energy might turn dangerous, when the barriers might fail, when the screaming might shift from joy to panic. A strange energy fills the air, not dangerous exactly, but charged with the kind of electricity that comes before lightning strikes. The crowd seems to sense it too. Even their screaming has taken on a different quality, more focused, more intense. Paul tries to lose himself in the bass line of I Feel Fine, but his eyes keep returning to the official messenger who's now somehow made it past the outer security ring. The stage suddenly feels very small, very exposed. These concerts have always been about controlled chaos, but control is slipping away minute by minute. The schedule that governs every second of their lives, the careful choreography of entrances and exits, the precise timing that keeps them safe, all of it depends on predictability. And this man represents something completely unpredictable, walking straight toward them while the entire audience watches without understanding what they're witnessing. The song ends, but Paul barely notices. His bass hangs heavy on its strap as he watches the figure in the dark suit reach the edge of the stage itself, no longer separated by barriers or distance or the usual rules that keep their two worlds apart. And then, in a moment that defies all protocol, the stranger steps onto the stage itself just as they transition into their next song. The sound cuts through the air for exactly 3 beats before everything changes. Paul sees him first, not climbing or scrambling like the occasional fan who breaks through security, but stepping up with the measured confidence of someone who belongs there. The man's suit is immaculate, his movements deliberate, and when he raises his hand toward them, it's not reaching for autographs or trying to touch fame. It's a gesture that demands immediate attention. Paul's bass line stumbles. The mistake sends a ripple through the rhythm section, and Ringo's drumstick hovers for a fraction of a second too long. George notices the hesitation and glances over, his guitar sustaining a note that should have already moved on. But John doesn't stop playing. John never stops playing, not for anything, until he sees Paul's face. The crowd hasn't noticed yet. The sea of fans is still screaming, still surging forward, still lost in their own collective hysteria. But on stage, time has slowed to a crawl. The official figure is speaking now, his mouth moving with urgent precision, though his words are completely swallowed by the deafening chorus surrounding them. He's not looking at all 4 Beatles, his attention is fixed solely on Paul, and whatever he's trying to communicate is making Paul's face go pale. John's guitar falls silent first. The absence of sound is like a crack in reality, and suddenly George stops too. Ringo's drums continue for 2 more beats before he realizes he's playing alone, his sticks frozen mid-air as he stares at the unthinkable scene unfolding in front of him. For the first time in their career, the Beatles have stopped playing in the middle of a song. The crowd's screaming begins to change. Not immediately. It takes several seconds for the thousands of minds to process what their eyes are seeing. The sound shifts from ecstatic celebration to confused murmuring to something approaching silence. It's like watching a massive wave recede, leaving behind a strange, hollow quiet that none of them have ever experienced during a live performance. Paul removes his bass guitar entirely, letting it hang loose on its strap as he steps forward. The official messenger is still talking, his voice now audible in the relative quiet, though his words are too low and urgent for anyone else to hear. Whatever he's saying is making Paul nod grimly, his famous smile completely absent for the first time tonight. John abandons his Rickenbacker and moves closer, followed by George and then Ringo, who steps out from behind his kit for the first time during any concert. They form a tight circle around the messenger, their backs to the audience, their instruments forgotten. From the crowd's perspective, it looks like a huddle, like the 4 most famous people in the world are having a private conversation while countless spectators watch in stunned silence. The urgent messenger finishes speaking and steps back, his mission apparently complete. He doesn't wait for questions or responses. He simply nods once, turns, and walks back toward the edge of the stage with the same purposeful stride that brought him there. Security guards materialize to escort him, but they're not restraining him. They're protecting his exit. The Beatles remain frozen in their huddle for several more seconds, processing whatever news has just shattered their world. Paul turns first, facing the ocean of confused faces that stretches beyond the stage lights. The massive crowd who came to scream are now silent, waiting for an explanation that will never come. His hand moves to his microphone, then stops. Some moments are too large for words, too significant to be contained in the usual pleasantries and crowd work that fill the spaces between songs. Instead, he does something unprecedented. He walks to the edge of the stage and sits down, his legs dangling over the side like a child on a dock. The gesture is so unexpected, so utterly human, that it breaks something fundamental about the distance between performer and audience. John follows without hesitation, then George, then Ringo. 4 young men in matching suits, sitting on the edge of a stage, suddenly looking very small in a very large world. The crowd doesn't know how to respond. Some people start to cheer, thinking this is part of the show, but the sound dies quickly when they realise the Beatles aren't performing anymore. They're just existing, processing whatever news has changed everything. Paul's face is visible now in the stage lights, and there's something in his expression that makes the audience lean forward, straining to understand. John reaches over and places a hand on Paul's shoulder. It's such a simple gesture, but in this moment, with all these people watching, it becomes profound. These aren't the Beatles anymore. They're just 4 friends dealing with something difficult together. George pulls out a harmonica and plays a single soft note that floats over the silent crowd. Not a song, not a performance, just a sound that seems to say what words cannot. The silence stretches for nearly a full minute, which feels like an eternity in concert time. Then Paul stands up and the others follow. But instead of returning to their instruments, they walk to the front of the stage together. Paul picks up his microphone one last time, and when he speaks, his voice carries a weight that wasn't there before. "Thank you," he says simply. "Thank you for everything." They don't explain. They don't apologize for the incomplete song or the broken moment. They just wave, not the practiced, energetic waves of performers, but the quiet, genuine waves of people saying goodbye. Then they turn and walk toward the back of the stage, leaving their instruments behind like discarded props. The crowd finally finds its voice, but it's different now. Not screaming, not demanding, but something closer to understanding. They're witnessing the end of something, though they won't understand what until years later. As the Beatles disappear into the darkness backstage, the sea of fans in Candlestick Park begin to applaud, not for the performance they didn't get, but for the humanity they unexpectedly witnessed. The stage lights dim, but nobody moves to leave. They stay in their seats, in the quiet, processing what they've just experienced. Somewhere in that silence, the age of Beatlemania ends and something else begins. The understanding that the 4 young men they worshipped were always just that, young men dealing with a world too big and too demanding and too full of news that couldn't wait. The last official Beatles concert ends not with music, but with the sound of an arena full of people, learning what it means to witness grace under pressure.